Most valuable work inside a modern corporation doesn't happen in a brightly lit conference room. Instead, it happens hours, driven by dedicated individuals willing to tackle deep, unrecognized problems in total isolation. Priscilla Tan, a senior product strategist, spent 8 months operating in exactly this kind of isolation. After identifying an entirely unaddressed market segment, she spent her nights and weekends building out a comprehensive strategy to capture it. This chart shows the sheer volume of material Priscilla produced during that time: financial models, hours of customer interviews, and a deeply researched phased rollout plan. By month 8, those 3 streams accumulated into a densely packed 60-page proposal. This intensive, solitary effort matters because it establishes an undeniable record of foundational ownership. The core of the project existed fully formed, long before any other variables were introduced. That variable arrived at month 9. Management assigned a newer colleague named Desmond to the project, strictly to provide additional bandwidth to help push the massive proposal across the finish line. For the first few months, the collaboration was genuinely positive. Desmond was sharp, asked great questions, and contributed real value to the document. Adding a second person to a previously solo project introduces a structural vulnerability: ownership ambiguity. An aggressively solitary initiative suddenly becomes subject to external interpretation. A warm, productive working relationship actually creates a false sense of security. The original creator naturally lowers their guard, leaving them highly vulnerable to what happens next. Modern credit theft rarely involves dramatic, overt lies. Instead, ownership is slowly eroded through everyday vocabulary, a process known as semantic drift. Phase 1 began around month 10. In casual conversations in the break room, Desmond started telling colleagues that we're building a new market strategy. Saying "we" is technically defensible for a collaborator, but when repeated to enough people on external teams, it quietly recalibrates the organization's understanding, shifting the internal narrative from a solo initiative to a joint venture. Phase 2 hit at month 11. With Priscilla's calendar overloaded with other duties, Desmond stepped in to present their project updates during cross-functional sync meetings. This visual scale demonstrates how Desmond deliberately escalated his language in those meetings. He leaned heavily on phrases like "our thinking" and "we've been exploring," visibly tilting the perceived weight of the project toward a joint initiative. These micro-shifts in language successfully established Desmond as a co-equal voice. He didn't have to officially claim ownership, he simply let the vocabulary do the work for him. The climax arrived in month 13, during the crucial leadership review, where the executive team would make a final funding decision on the proposal. Their manager was pulled into an unexpected emergency that morning. In the resulting scramble, Desmond took the lead presenter role, reducing Priscilla to a silent, supporting capacity in the room. He confidently pitched the core strategy, walked executives through complex financial models, and explained the customer segmentation as if he were their primary architect. Looking at this timeline graphic, we can see the exact mechanics of the theft. The CFO asked who originated the foundational market gap analysis. Desmond replied that it came from conversations Priscilla and I were having early on, pointing to his arrival at month 9. The timeline shows the actual market gap analysis was completed and fully documented by month 4. That single, carefully constructed sentence achieved total public appropriation of the project's foundation, while remaining just ambiguous enough to defend if questioned. Realizing exactly what was happening, Priscilla made a strategic choice. She remained entirely silent. Trying to defend your credit in real time is a psychological trap. Any vocal correction to an executive team immediately reads to leadership as petty, insecure, or defensive. The person taking the credit always appears calm and cooperative. The victim trying to reclaim their stolen work inevitably appears emotionally volatile. Credit theft relies on charisma and optics. Engaging in a verbal battle in that room guarantees a loss of professional capital. This data map visualizes Priscilla's post-meeting counteroffensive. She returned to her desk and pulled the immutable digital reality, the 14-month version history logs of the project document. You can see the heavy, singular user activity isolated in the first 8 months. She then aggregates her original proposal emails and time-stamped customer interview logs from 4 months prior to Desmond's involvement, layering them into a dense, undeniable cluster of proof. This cold, objective chronology cuts right through the highly malleable joint initiative story that had infected the company's perception. In a corporate environment where narratives are easily rewritten by a confident voice and semantic drift, an unemotional, meticulously preserved digital paper trail is a professional's only definitive shield for their deep work. Direct intellectual theft is easy to spot. Someone takes a file, crosses out your name, and writes theirs. But credit disputes rarely happen that way. They live in a much grayer area of ambiguity. Appropriation usually happens through subtle, gradual shifts in language. Over months of status updates and meetings, the singular I creeps into we, and my strategy slowly dissolves into our thinking. If you respond to this erosion with a standard verbal complaint, you force a manager into an impossible position. They are suddenly asked to mediate competing subjective memories of who said what, rather than evaluating facts. Surviving a dispute built on ambiguous language requires stripping away the aggrieved emotion. You have to replace it with an undeniable, objective architecture of proof. The solution is a document known as an authorship record. It is strictly chronological, entirely non-argumentative, and explicitly avoids any framing that reads as an accusation. This timeline starts at month 1 with an original gap analysis, establishing a foundation 4 months before the collaborator joined. We expand rightward to include independently dated interview notes gathered between months 1 and 8. At month 9, a structural breakdown of the 60-page proposal drops in. Using actual revision history, it color-codes the massive volume of originated content, segregating it from the small sliver of text the collaborator merely reformatted. Exporting this revision history directly from third-party software is the crucial step. It provides objective verification that doesn't rely on anyone trying to recall how a brainstorming session played out. By stacking this sequence of time-stamped evidence, the record demonstrates that the conceptual foundation was fully constructed before the joint process ever began. Having built the record, the next choice is where to deploy it. Taking it directly to the collaborator often results in defensive posturing in circular arguments over intent. Skipping over the chain of command straight to the executive team is equally risky. It escalates the conflict prematurely and risks painting you as unprofessional. The optimal intervention point is your direct manager. As the person who originally assigned the project, they have a vested interest in accurately evaluating both employees for future advocacy. In this case, the manager reviewed the chronological evidence and offered a surprising admission. She had noticed the creeping use of we and our thinking in updates, but simply assumed it reflected a legitimate, evenly split division of labor. Handing a manager a concrete chronological timeline removes the burden of refereeing a he said, she said argument. It gives them the exact tools they need to act with confidence as an empowered institutional decision-maker. The manager stepped in to address the discrepancy pridedly. Confronted with the data, the collaborator responded not with aggressive denial, but with genuine seeming surprise at how the pattern looked when laid out month by month. He insisted the language shift wasn't a calculated plan for theft. Instead, he claimed it was a natural byproduct of feeling increasingly invested in a project he had come to care about. This murky psychology is exactly why workplace credit disputes are so difficult to navigate. The comfortable, self-serving nature of gradual investment provides perfect cover, making appropriation nearly impossible to prosecute without hard documentation. Ultimately, whether the collaborator's intentions were malicious or completely innocent does not matter. Objective chronological data bypasses intent entirely, forcing a necessary correction in how the institution credits the work. The resolution required a formal reset. The manager arranged a follow-up meeting with the exact same executive team that had sat through the collaborator's initial credit-blurring presentation. This diagram illustrates the clarified project summary presented to the executives. It explicitly attributes the massive foundational base of the strategy to its actual creator, while acknowledging the smaller capstone layer where the collaborator added genuine late-stage execution. The outcome was tangible and swift. The promotion that executive leadership had been leaning toward giving the collaborator, based on his visible presentation presence, was instead awarded to the original author roughly 6 weeks later. The manager specifically cited the initial strategic vision and the early solitary execution as the deciding factors for the promotion. Securing intellectual equity maintains a surgically accurate distribution of credit without erasing the secondary contributions that occur later in the process. The post-conflict reality is rarely dramatic. The two employees still work together on different projects, maintaining a dynamic that is polite and professional, but distinctly cooler than it was before the dispute. An entire organization's understanding of authorship can shift one technically true sentence at a time. These small adjustments quietly erase individual ownership without ever requiring a single undeniable lie. If you wait until you are sitting in a presentation, watching someone else take a bow for your months of labor, immediate outrage will only make you look petty and reactive. Defending against the gradual erosion of intellectual equity requires the methodical discipline of keeping receipts long before a conflict ever arises.